Hello everybody. As everyone and their nan knows by this point, all of the characters in Don't Starve are quote-unquote voiced by instruments. And well, sometimes instrument adjacents. So today, let's go over each and every character, in-game and not, and talk about their voice, why they have the voice that they do, and some fun trivia about whatever instrument they may or may not have. First up, we're going to be starting with Wonky. Because why not? This is the character that any other character can be if they get too many silly monkey trinkets. This character is voiced by a cuíca, which is a Brazilian friction drum. Do I really gotta tell you why this instrument was chosen? It sounds exactly like a monkey laughing. Literally no better instrument for a monkey-based character will get to you, Wilbur. It's an incredibly silly sounding and fun instrument that I totally didn't put first to make all my Brazilian fans go crazy. Obrigado, amigas. Muito amor. Next, Wanda. Now hers is a very tricky instrument to pin down, so I bet you're all so glad that it's a grandfather clock chiming. You know exactly why her voice is a clock chiming. Time-based character and all that. Now I could joke about how this whole character is a walking gimmick, but it's such a good choice for her that I can't even be mad. As for some grandfather clock lore, well, they were invented back in 1680 by William Clement, though this is up for dispute. Work time. She is voiced by a sawtooth tone mixed with gargling. An absolutely acrid sounding combination that fits wonderfully. Not much to say about it since it's not technically an instrument and is just synthesized, but I do have a little theory about their voice that I'll mention when we get to Wilbur. Oh, let's look at Walter. Now there's a little dispute about what his voice actually is. Some people claim it's a bugle, a very out of tune one, while some claim it's a blade of grass whistle. They both sound nearly identical and honestly both fit. A bugle is a tiny little cute horn, formerly made out of ox horns, that play a single tune. Fits the Boy Scout themes because I swear these dudes be using these on their missions. And a blade of grass whistle is, get this, not a real instrument and it's just a noise grass makes if you blow into it in a funny way. I see his voice being this more than the bugle since it fits the outdoorsy theme this kid has going for him. Also, I should mention, Walter has a unique song that he'll sing, complete with voice lines, if he eats glommer goop or a tall bird egg. Based on great green gobs of greasy grimy gopher guts. Never thought I'd say that today. After that ambiguous one, we have Wortox, who is simply voiced by a violin. This is an easy reason why, because the devil himself plays a fiddle. Well, I mean he could, I don't know the guy, but the devil is often depicted playing a fiddle, which is just another word for violin. There's also that classic song, The Devil Went Down to Georgia, that mentions the devil being a fiddler. Why am I bringing this up? Because Wortox looks like and acts like a little devil, doesn't he? Wona is a bit of a strange one. She's voiced by pipes, specifically PVC piping, either as an instrument such as a tubulum, oh my gosh that thing looks amazing, or just someone banging PVC pipes against each other. A very industrial and industrious instrument that fits the industrious woman perfectly. She'd probably make something like this if you gave her the materials and time. Now we're on to Wheeler. Yep, we're doing every character in this video. She is voiced by a piano, with a very jovial and ragtime cadence. There's no real cultural significance to her being voiced by a piano, besides ragtime music peaking around the late 18th century to early 19th, which is when Don't Starve Together takes place. It's a very upbeat and jaunty sounding instrument that is played by the very upbeat and jaunty character. Sometimes there doesn't need to be a big cultural reference to a character having the voice that they do, and the instrument just has to sound nice. Wormwood is voiced by the good old didgeridoo. This instrument is well over 1,000 years old, known by many as one originating from the Aboriginal peoples of Australia. Now there's probably some cultural reason as to why Wormwood is represented by this, but I think this is just a rare case of, this is what the character sounds like. Like, this isn't just an instrument coming out of Wormwood's mouth, that's just his voice. Hollowed out wood instrument? That's Wormwood. So what about Wilbur's voice? Why, it's an ocarina. Those silly little potato flutes that most people know from a certain video game based heavily around one. I have no idea why she's voiced by an ocarina, other than the fact that she's a little girl and it's kind of high pitched. So instead, how about I tell you that the ocarina is thought to be over 12,000 years old, and was found in both ancient Chinese and Mesoamerican cultures. However, the modern ocarina as we know it today was finalised in design around the 19th century in Italy. Fancy that. Maybe its ties to ancient cultures is what inspired it into being Wilbur's voice, with Hamlet being filled with ancient culture. Food for thought. Next up, we may as well talk about Warbucks to wrap things up with the Hamlet section. He's voiced by a more in-tune bugle compared to Walter. Much more fitting as well, since it's an instrument that's often associated with military service. And since Warbuck used to sing praise of the East India Company, I don't think I need to explain any more. This man committed war crimes. But he did also play part of 1812 Overture when fighting things, which made him technically the first and only character to have a unique battle cry. And technically speaking as well, nobody does anymore thanks to his removal. On to Shipwrecked now. These ones have way more interesting origins. Let's start with Wilbur, since I mentioned him being inferior to Wonky earlier. Sorry buddy, you ain't him and his samba music. Anyway, Wilbur is voiced by a barrel organ, or more precisely a street organ. This was chosen because a lot of organ grinders, that's somebody who plays these organs on the street to earn a bit of money, would often use monkeys as companions to help collect cash from people. One odd but surprisingly valid reason for giving Wilbur this voice. Fun fact, in Wes's animated short, you can see this exact setup going down on the streets of Paris. Who else would you probably find in Paris? Wally, of course. He is voiced by a steel pan, which is a really cool sounding instrument that originated from Trinidad and Tobago, a very tropical country, and the instrument itself harks to feelings of being posted up on a beach somewhere, exactly the kind of vibe Shipwrecked was going for. Plus, I have this little crazy theory that Wally comes from the Caribbean or maybe even Trinidad and Tobago. You can see more about that in this video up in the corner. But another reason that the steel pan fits? It kinda looks like a crockpot, and sounds like ephemeral cutlery. I love this instrument so much. Who else do I love so much? Woodlegs. Oh, my silly pirate Umphy. He is voiced by the sound of the unforgettable concertina. You don't need to tell me why they picked this. It's the most iconic pirate instrument you could ever imagine. One of the best fits they could manifest. A concertina itself was like a little mini accordion, makes a really fun tune. Fun fact about it though, despite it being associated with pirates, it was actually invented 100 years after the peak of piracy in North America. Its small size also made it popular among travellers and sailors, hence how it got its popularity among pirate media. And the last Shipwrecked character is Wani. Her voice is nothing but the iconic ukulele, an instrument that is technically Portuguese in history, but was massively popularised by its use in Hawaii, almost now an icon of the state. Just like the steel drum, an incredibly tropical sounding instrument, and it really sells the feeling Shipwrecked was always about. I also personally headcanon Wani as being from Hawaii, which holds more ground because Wani is an incredibly Hawaiian-like name, specifically because it ends in Lani. And that wraps up the DLC survivors. Time for the good oh wait, I keep forgetting Reign of Giants was a DLC. Weber is voiced by a well, according to a sound designer at Clay, a synthesizer being dropped down a flight of stairs. I see. It's a very electronic and bassy sound, the kind of thing you'd almost expect a giant spider to sound like. But where have we seen a character with an electronic nonsense voice before? That's right, Wirt. How about this for a theory for you guys? What if this is what constant monsters sound like? Just some discordant, scratchy noises. Otherworldly in a sense. Not something the survivors would ever hear before, since electronic instruments weren't around that time period. As for the other Reign of Giants character, Wickrid, she was voiced by very loud brass horns, super processed and incredibly overdone. How come? Well, what more do you expect a Valkyrie stage singer who has such a booming voice and presence to have? Clay really knew how to make a character sound like you'd expect them to sound with these instrument voices. They did such an amazing job. Oh, some brass horn trivia. Did you know the tuba is just Latin for trumpet, despite a tuba very much not being a trumpet? Yeah, I got nothing. And that wraps up the DLC survivors. Now it's time for good old Don't Starve Alone characters. Let's start with the one I literally only just remembered while I was writing this script. Wagstaff, whose voice you can actually hear in Don't Starve Together. Anyway, he's voiced by a factory whistle. The reason for this? He's an old man who owns a factory. A very important factory in the lore. Plus he's an inventor, engineer, evil horrible bourgeoisie man. A factory whistle fits him just fine. What is a factory whistle? Those big old whistles that factories had back in the day that they used to indicate when there was break time or something. Also, his voice in Don't Starve alone gets more and more distorted the lower his health is, because of the whole he's just a projection that's losing connection gimmick that he has. Time for Maxwell, the old git. He's voiced by a unique instrument called a harmonium, a type of pump organ played with keys that's either handheld or played like a sit-down piano. It's kind of akin to an organ since it uses wind. A very antiquated and unique instrument. Why is this used for Maxwell? Because it's a very foreboding and booming sound, one that would be suitable for an equally foreboding Maxwell. Sadly, we're approaching the Don't Starve solo characters, whose voices were mostly based on vibes instead of any cultural or lore reasons. Excellent choice though, couldn't imagine him sounding like any other instrument nowadays. Wes is voiced by a... which was invented around about... in the year... honestly a great choice, such a beautiful sound. Okay, he has no instrument, but did you know? Despite having no instrument whatsoever, he's the only survivor that will make a noise with their idle animation. Pretty ironic, isn't it? Something to note though, in Wortox's animated short, you can hear this. Is that Wes's voice? Is my man voiced by a slide whistle? Or is it just Foley for the video? I'm leaning towards the latter, but what do you think? Did Clay reveal Wes's voice all those years ago and I only just found out? Anyway, Woody is voiced by a cello. For this one, I like to think they chose it because the cello is such a massive hunk of wood. Look at the size of this thing. Good quality timber in there too, which would make it fitting for Woody's instrument if I wasn't reaching. Other than that, it's a deep, bassy violin. Fun fact, a cello is literally a massive violin. Same family too. But his segment doesn't just end there. His wife, Lucy, is voiced by a musical saw, which, as you can see, is literally just a handsaw you rub with a rod to make a funny tune. You can imagine why she's voiced by one of these, right? Wickrbottom time. This old bird is voiced by her iconic oboe, one of the most metal-looking woodwind instruments you can imagine. Now, as to why she is voiced by an oboe, I have no idea. We're getting closer and closer to vibe territory now, so hold on tight. So all I can say is, yep, this is an old lady sounding instrument, alright. So how about we say this? Just like how Wickrbottom is one of the most experienced and knowledgeable characters in the game, the oboe is an instrument that demands experience and knowledge as well. Apparently it's a super hard instrument to learn to play, so let's say it fits. Moving on, our favourite robot, WX78, is voiced by their iconic... voice. Like, this bot doesn't have an instrument. I'm pretty sure this is literally just their voice. Just like Wormwood. What a coincidence. Let's just ignore the fact that I said the other characters with a synthesized voice are what monsters sound like. Unless WX is a monster. Kinda like how Wendy is a monster to everybody that wanted the last update to come out on time. I just dated this video, didn't I? She is voiced by an alto flute, an incredibly spooky and ephemeral sounding flute. Once again, another it was picked because it sounds like a spooky child, I guess. So here's a fact about alto flutes. The reason it has that weird curved head is so that you can actually use the valves if you have shorter arms. You have no idea how hard it is to find facts about instruments. Wolfgang. This big old booming dude is voiced by a tuba. Literally the biggest, yep, that fits choice they could have gone with for the early characters. Wolfgang is pretty much what happens when you give a tuba life. Depending on his might, his voice will also change in pitch too. Ain't that cool? Time for your tuba fact. I already gave you one earlier, so you're getting two today, ain't you lucky? It was invented in 1835, and is the largest brass instrument in the family, just like how Wolfgang is also the largest character in the game. Also, paradoxically, the smallest character in the game as well. But what of our darling Willow? She is voiced by a flute. Just a regular flute. No alto or potato flute here. Why is she voiced by a flute? Say it with me. I have literally no idea. Her and Wilson were the first characters ever devised for the game, so they literally picked the instruments that just fit them. No lore, no cultural guff, no cute puns, just, hey, this instrument is probably what their voice sounds like. Do I need to give you a flute fact? They're one of the oldest instruments still used nowadays, dating back to over 35,000 years ago. Just like how Willow is secretly 35,000 years old. Totally. And last, but totally least, Mr. Don't Starve himself, the instrument everyone attributes to Don't Starve, Wilson's. This Gruber's voice is his iconic muted trumpet. specifically a harmon and a cup one. A muted trumpet is like a regular trumpet, but they bung some object in there to make it sound freaky. But yeah, it sounds cool, kinda nasally, like the nerd that Wilson is. You see now why I did this video in reverse, huh? There could be some references here that I'm not seeing, so do let me know if you find any. So that's that. That's all of the playable and kind of playable survivors in Don't Starve and what their voices are and looking into why. But today, I'm feeling zesty. How about we do something I've yet to do on this channel and look at the scary world of unused content? Ooh! I really ought to do a full video based on the world of unused content, but for now, let's quickly go over some unused character voices you can find in certain versions of the game. First up, Wilton. He would have been a playable skeleton, or a part of Woodlegs where he would turn into a skeleton, but that never happened. Anyway, it was voiced by a bunch of bamboo clanking against each other. Thank you, Clay, for not making him voiced by a xylophone or a trumpet. I know that took a lot of restraint. Wani could have a whole video about her, to be honest. This was basically the early version of Wickrid, who was going to be a vegetarian shepherd instead of, you know, this. Her voice was this incredibly annoying high-pitched flute that hurt my ears so badly during the research for this video. No more flutes, please. While this was some old guy that had next to nothing known about him. Voiced by a violin. Or a viola. I have no idea what the difference is. That's all you're getting from me, by the way, because that's all we have on this character. This picture, and this sound effect. And once again, last, but totally not least this time, the final character voice we'll be looking at today is the Pyro from Team Fortress 2. What the f***? Yes, for some reason, Clay made a nearly fully functional Pyro character in Don't Starve. It is seriously so well developed, it's almost baffling. Why did Clay do this? Well, there's Don't Starve items in Team Fortress 2, so maybe they wanted to make the crossover work both ways. God, what freak alternate universe would we be in if the Pyro stood shoulder to shoulder with the other survivors? Oh right, I forgot about the video I was working on. They were voiced by this muffled string instrument, possibly yet another violin or, God forbid, a viola. The muffled part is because of how the Pyro in TF2 is also muffled with their voices. As for the string instrument, maybe there's more devil parallels to be drawn here like Wortox, since the Pyro is fire-themed? A stretch, perhaps? Maybe I'm putting way too much thought into the Pyro from Team Fortress 2 being inside Don't Starve's data files. You'll get in your own video one day, buddy. You ain't safe from me. And that's all of the playable and hope to be playable characters' voices in Don't Starve. I hope you all enjoyed this. It's been a wild ride researching all of this stuff. I also want to extend a massive thank you to Kezia for helping me work on this video. She did the amazing artwork you saw in the thumbnail and helped a lot with the research. Go give her a follow, her links are in the description. Let me know if you have any idea why certain characters are voiced by certain instruments down below. And whilst you're down there, let me know what you guys think I would be voiced by if I was a survivor and Don't Starve together. Do not say an annoying British guy, be nice to me. But for now, I'm heading off. Have a lovely day everybody, take care, bye bye.